Hi everyone, I'm Adam Turner. I work for Defra. Um, I look after sustainable technology across government, um, and I chair a pan-government forum. So we've got membership from every government department, agency and body. We represent about 500,000 civil servants. We're lucky enough to have Ben on that group as well. And we've got county councils and we've got IEMA and other people on there. And we're basically trying to share good practice. What I wanted to talk to you about today is obviously Ben's just covered everything in the world under this topic, which is brilliant. But the problem is when you're trying to implement that in an organization, and I've had experience of trying to do this in government, you've got to try and frame this into something that people can understand. So I'm going to take it back a bit to sort of around 2010, and Gartner, if you've heard of them, big IT kind of consultancy, thought leaders, had a hype cycle around green IT. Everyone got very excited about green IT. There's loads of academic papers and journals, and organisations jumped on this, and government were no exception. We formed a tiger team, and we got loads of people together to tackle the green ICT issue around energy use, around waste, around efficiency, around reforming the ways that we work across government. That was called the way we work back then. It's now called smart working, but basically digital working. All of this stuff was very exciting, and there was a bunch of strategies and policies and workbooks and things were worked through. By about 2012, a lot of this stuff had been implemented, and I was working in the MOD, and as I say, all of this stuff was in policy and strategy, and I was talking to my colleagues in MOD about green ICT, and we're meant to be pushing this into every single project program that we're doing. Bear in mind, MOD is covering 200,000 users. Nothing compared to the NHS, I know, but still a significant amount, thousands of projects coming through every year, and you're meant to apply those principles of green ICT, something as fairly simple as green ICT, into everything we're doing. And I'm talking to these senior military leaders about this, and you know what, I don't get very far and I'm chucked out of the room. So I dust myself off and I go back in and I talk about sustainable ICT, I talk about energy efficiency, and I talk about all that stuff, and then they get confused, because if anyone on the call here today and dialing in works in IT, you might know about ITIL. The IT infrastructure library, and the term sustainment is in there as part of the training, and it's about keeping systems going. And when you're talking to military, you're talking very much about keeping systems going at any cost. That doesn't matter the impact on the environment, the impact on humans, the impact on anything else. As long as you keep those critical frontline forward operational based systems running, that is the main thing. That is sustainability. So clearly talking sustainability to them was not going to get me very far either. So I went back out, thought about it a bit, and went back in and talked about resilience. And I talked to them. To give you an example, one of the projects we were looking at was something called a deployable node. So this was 2 or 3 servers inside a box that you could pick up. 2 squaddies could carry it out to the front line. You had a couple of generators to power this thing, and you power your laptops off it, and that is all your command and control for the front line. Applying sustainability or resilience thinking to that, you start thinking, right, okay, if we can cut the weight of this stuff, if we can make this stuff modular and repairable on the front line, if we can reduce the amount of energy that's using, if we can make it lighter, we will need less fuel, we will be less in trouble in our supply chains, we will need less convoys of cars and vehicles transporting fuel across deserts. If you can picture sort of those Afghanistan pictures from 10 years ago, they were all really vulnerable. So that talking to those senior leaders about resilience, I'm actually talking about the same things as sustainability, and I was talking about green ICT. If you take it all back further enough, it's kind of all the same thing. The idea is just kind of being expanded out to cover these different spheres of it all. I got a lot further with that. That was applied and I had success. But to be fair, picking up on what Ben was saying, that is resilience for business as usual. We're not talking about resilience in terms of the climate emergency and everything that's coming up. to understand how we can be resilient against all of those. When I took control of the cross-government forum, I wrote and published a new cross-government strategy. You can find this on gov.uk. And I did two things there. One thing was to move the conversation from green ICT to sustainable ICT, therefore not just about the environmental pillar, but about all three pillars of sustainability. And the second thing was to move from an estates view to a services view. And that was because we had offshored all our responsibilities and all our risk onto our service providers. We've been reporting a reduced carbon footprint on our ICT across government, but the reality was that carbon footprint was now with Amazon and Google and BT and you name it, they all had that carbon footprint on our behalf. So we're trying to report that. We asked them formally for that information to add transparency and to get that big picture view of what our actual use of technology is, so we calculate it and report it and understand it in the grand scheme of things and measure it against the use of transport, against the use of energy, against the use of waste, all of that kind of good stuff. And you know what? Those service providers can't currently provide that information. It's not possible. They can provide their strategies and their documents pointing towards targets for net zero by 2025, 2030, all that kind of good stuff. But from a services point of view, i.e. you or I using Zoom, how much energy are we using Zoom right now based on the Zoom platform that's providing this? They couldn't do that. So there's more work that needs to be done there. Moving this forward, I'm currently writing a new strategy, picking up on a lot of the stuff that Ben's talking about, but I'm trying to package it in a way that I can get across to my senior leaders, all those chief digital information officers, chief technology officers, chief information officers, so it filters down inside the organizations. And I'm not talking about sustainability, I'm calling it responsible and resilient. Responsible because we have to be careful and think about who we are doing business with. We have to think about the impact on the planet and on ourselves, and we have to be aware of all the slavery and all the bad stuff that goes on throughout the tiers in the supply chain. By doing that, we become more resilient, and we have to recognize and map where all of our stuff is coming from. And the more we map it and understand it, the more resilient we can be, because we can mitigate against that. And we're hearing from Astrid later from Tech Buyer talking about circular stuff, and that'll be fantastic, because that is where things have to move to. We have to be circular because we have to keep things in the loop to stop bringing stuff out of the ground, because bringing stuff out of the ground and bringing it across the world makes us kind of less resilient. It brings on more risk to the system. So we have to try and close that loop. Very, very briefly, I just want to talk about the fourth industrial revolution. I think it's very, very exciting. Ben's mentioned AI for Earth as an exciting program. I agree, there's lots of very good stuff out there. But you remember at the beginning when I was talking about MOD and that apathy that set in around 2012, that was because of an attitude that was being thrown at me called greener by default. Loads and loads of people said we don't have to do green IT anymore. We don't have to do sustainable IT anymore, because all the new kit that's coming out, all of those new servers and laptops, they're all more efficient than the old stuff. So why do we need to bother? I kind of feel the same thing's happening again now. With 5G, with IoT, with AI, with blockchain, loads and loads of exciting technologies that have been sold and marketed as these great environmental saviors. We have to be very, very careful that we are not creating more of a problem by adopting these, because we're not very good, to be frank, at closing off our old stuff, getting rid of that technical debt, closing down our legacy data centers, our data stores, and making sure the new stuff we're adopting is actually delivering a benefit. We have to apply that sustainability lens and assessment on everything that we're doing. Look at this stuff, look at the solutions, prove it's doing good, and make sure it is, and monitor and measure it. Going back to what we're doing across government, we have to monitor and measure and have information from our service providers in order to prove that we're having a benefit. Sorry, so from Astrid, what I'm saying about shifting responsibility is really interesting. Do you think you'll be finding suppliers more responsive and useful on this as this goes on? Yeah, so we've started discussions across government through a forum, with all suppliers through a body called Tech UK. We've engaged with 85 or so suppliers as part of our consultation piece for the new strategy, and the aim is to get that conversation going a bit stronger. I think we're seeing with the likes of Microsoft launching a tool for the use of their cloud platform. Amazon are talking about heading in the right direction, but currently they're making everyone sign NDAs before they release any information. But I think we increasingly see that suppliers will see they have to step up and share this information, otherwise they won't get the business. Again, being quite frank there, but I think that's kind of where we're going. Was there another question there, Alexis? Sorry.
There may have been a second one a bit further down. It was in the chat box. I can't see another one.
No, that's fine. The strategic trends one that Jamie's put up there in the chat, that's amazing. Have a look at that. That's a really, really interesting document. I recommend everyone goes and looks at that. It talks about how robotics are going to take over the world. Okay, I will shut up now.